Santa Barbara just became ground zero for one of the messiest landlord versus tenant showdowns in Southern California. And depending on which side of the lease you're on, this either feels like salvation or straight up theft. A rent freeze is in place, a lawsuit has been filed, and a city council is divided in a way that would make even the most seasoned local politicians reach for antacids. Let's unpack how we got here. Because this didn't happen in a vacuum. Santa Barbara has long been one of the most expensive rental markets in the country, with median rents that would make someone in the Midwest physically ill. The pressure on renters has been building for years. And when a 4-3 council majority decided enough was enough, they moved fast, maybe too fast, depending on who's writing your paycheck. The freeze itself is temporary, but the intention behind it is anything but. With council members already drafting what could become a permanent rent stabilization ordinance, complete with rent limits and a rental registry that landlords would have to join. Think of it like the government deciding your business now comes with a membership card, a rule book, and a ceiling on how much you can charge, except nobody asked if you wanted to join the club. Now, here's where the plot really thickens. Because a group of property owners and a rental property association didn't just write a strongly worded letter, they filed a lawsuit. They're arguing the process was rushed, lacked proper notice, and may constitute an unconstitutional taking of private income, which is a fancy legal way of saying the government can't just reach into your pocket without compensation. The constitutional taking argument is actually one of the more serious legal challenges here, because courts have historically drawn a careful line between regulation and confiscation. If rent limits are so restrictive that they prevent a landlord from earning a reasonable return, some courts have found that crosses the line, and that's not fringe theory, that's established precedent going back decades. But here's the irony that should make everyone pause for a second. The very thing landlords fear, mass selling and market exit, is exactly what critics of the ordinance warn could devastate the rental supply in a city that's already desperately short on housing. You can't solve a housing shortage by creating conditions that shrink the number of available rentals, which is a paradox that rent control debates have been running headfirst into since the 1970s. The optimism that once existed around Santa Barbara's housing future, the new developments, the quiet confidence that the market would self-correct has been replaced by a kind of anxious standoff where nobody quite knows what June's draft ordinance will say. And that uncertainty is its own kind of tax, because investors and property owners don't make rational long-term decisions in fog. They make nervous short-term ones. Historically, cities that have implemented rent stabilization have seen wildly different outcomes depending on how the policy was structured. With places like San Francisco offering cautionary tales of reduced rental inventory, and others showing modest stabilizing effects on lower income communities. The lesson history keeps trying to teach us is that the details matter more than the headlines, and a badly written ordinance can hurt the very people it was designed to protect. One of the most legitimate criticisms circulating right now isn't even about rent control. Philosophically, it's about process. Because rushing a policy this consequential without adequate public input is how you end up in court, which is exactly where Santa Barbara finds itself. Good policy and good process aren't mutually exclusive, and skipping one doesn't make the other more righteous. The debate over whether this should go to a public ballot is fascinating in its own right, because proponents worry that wealthy landlord groups would outspend tenant advocates and shape the outcome with money rather than merit. That concern isn't paranoid. Campaign finance in local ballot measures has absolutely influenced housing policy before, but bypassing a public vote also carries its own democratic cost. Here's what we do know as a practical matter. If you're a renter in Santa Barbara right now, the freeze offers short-term breathing room, but nothing is permanent until it is, and legal challenges could unwind everything. If you're a property owner, the moment to engage through public comment, legal channels, or organized advocacy is now, not after June's draft lands on the council's desk. The broader lesson for anyone watching this unfold is that local housing policy is where abstract economic debates become very real, very fast, and the people who stay informed and engaged consistently come out in better positions than those who tune in only when the crisis hits their doorstep. Conviction without strategy is just noise. And in real estate, as in most things, disciplined positioning beats emotional reaction every time. What Santa Barbara is really wrestling with is a question every high-cost American city is going to have to answer eventually. Who gets to stay, who gets to profit, and who decides the rules of that negotiation? There's no clean answer, but there are better and worse processes for finding one, and right now the city is learning that lesson the expensive way. Whether the ordinance survives legal challenge, gets rewritten in June, or ends up on a ballot, the market will adjust, it always does, and the investors and residents who prepared thoughtfully for multiple outcomes will be the ones still standing when the dust settles. Discipline, sizing, and consistency in how you approach any real estate environment will always outperform panic or euphoria. And if any of this has you thinking about where you stand in the real estate landscape, whether as an investor, a homeowner, or someone looking to make a move, check out our links in the description below, where we can help you get started with real estate investing, home contracting work, and connecting with the right lenders.